My name is Renee. I work in the financial district, and for almost 2 years, I used the underground parking structure on Mercer Street because it was the cheapest covered option within walking distance of my office. 4 levels below ground, somewhere around 600 spaces total, and by 7 in the evening, when I usually left, level 2 was already half empty. The morning commuters cleared out early. By the time I came down, it was long stretches of concrete and parked cars and the kind of low, flat silence that underground spaces have. Not quiet exactly, just muffled, like sound has less room to travel. I knew that garage the way you know any place you visit twice a day for 2 years. I knew which lights on level 3 flickered when the temperature dropped. I knew which stairwell door stuck and needed a shoulder. I knew my car was in spot 214, second pillar from the east wall, and I knew without counting that it was 41 steps from the elevator to my driver's side door. I'd never deliberately counted. I just knew. The night it happened, and was a Thursday in late October, I'd stayed for a team review that ran long, and by the time I got to the elevator, I was tired and a little irritable and thinking about nothing except getting home. I pressed 2, stepped out, and walked toward the east wall on autopilot. I was halfway to my car before I registered that something was wrong. I couldn't name it at first. It wasn't a sound. It was more like a quality of the air, that specific feeling of a space that looks empty but isn't. I slowed down slightly without fully stopping. My keys were already in my hand. I'd started doing that automatically years ago. Then I saw him. He was standing between 2 parked cars about 30 feet ahead of me, on the driver's side of a gray sedan, not doing anything, not loading bags, not looking at his phone, just standing in the gap between the cars, facing slightly in my direction, hands in the front pocket of his sweatshirt. He could have been waiting for someone. That was the obvious explanation, and I tried to give it to him, but no one was coming. The lot was empty in every direction, and the particular way he was positioned, just slightly angled, just visible enough, felt less like waiting and more like occupying a spot with a clear view of the only walkway from the elevator to the east wall. I changed direction without making it obvious, cut left between 2 rows, and looped around toward the emergency call box mounted to a pillar near the stairwell. I didn't look back. I heard footsteps about 10 seconds after I changed course. Not running, just walking, adjusted. The thing about the footsteps was how casual they were. There was no urgency in them at all. That was the part my body registered before my brain caught up. This person was not in a hurry. Whatever they were doing, they had time for it. I remember thinking, with the strange clarity that comes when adrenaline is working faster than conscious thought, he's done this before. That's a strange thing to think in a parking garage when nothing has technically happened yet. But the footsteps sounded patient, practiced, like someone who knew exactly how to pace a pursuit so that it didn't look like one. I reached the call box and turned around. He was 20 feet back. He had stopped when I stopped, hands still in his pocket, looking at me with an expression that I keep coming back to even now, years later, because there was genuinely nothing in it. Not embarrassment, not the slightly sheepish look of someone who realizes they've accidentally been walking the same direction as someone and wants to communicate they're harmless. Nothing. Just a flat, attentive expression. And then, While I was looking at him, the corner of his mouth pulled in a way that I can only describe as satisfied. Like this particular moment, me at a call box, looking back at him, was still within the bounds of how he expected things to go. I pressed the call box button. The attendant answered from the remote booth. I told her there was a man following me on level 2 and I needed someone down here. She said she was contacting security and to stay put. He turned around before they arrived. No rush, normal pace, back the way he'd come, like he'd just remembered where he was going. Security reviewed the footage within the hour and found that he had entered the garage through the pedestrian entrance 43 minutes before I came off that elevator. He had no registered space on level 2. He'd walked the floor for a few minutes, found the spot between those two cars, and stood there, waiting. The cameras caught him checking his phone twice, but mostly just standing, watching the elevator doors at the end of the row. Security filed an incident report. The image was blurry enough that tracking him was difficult. I never heard of any follow-up. I moved to a different structure the following week, one that costs $40 more a month and has a staffed attendant on every active floor until close. I have never once thought about that $40 in a way that involved resentment. What I can't stop thinking about is the 43 minutes. He'd been on that floor for 43 minutes before I arrived, which means either he knew my rough schedule, possible if he'd watched the garage long enough, or he was willing to stand in a concrete parking structure in the cold for the better part of an hour on the chance that the right person would eventually come off that elevator. I don't know which interpretation is more disturbing. I've thought about it a lot, and I still don't. What I do know is that the moment another voice came through that call box speaker, the moment the space stopped being just him and me, the calculation changed. He didn't argue. He didn't pretend he'd been there for innocent reasons. He just left. And that tells me something. I'm not sure it makes me feel better, but it tells me something. I've told this story to a few people over the years, and the response I get most often is some version of, "But nothing actually happened." And that's true in the narrowest possible sense. Nothing happened to me physically. I got to my car eventually, I drove home, I ate dinner, and watched television and went to bed. In the morning, the world was normal. But here's what I think about when people say that. He was on that floor for 43 minutes in a cold, concrete, poorly lit parking garage at 7 in the evening with no car registered to that level and no apparent reason to be there, standing in a gap between two parked vehicles with a clear sightline to the elevator. For 43 minutes, whatever was or wasn't going to happen, that much planning had gone into the possibility of it happening, and the only variable he hadn't accounted for was that I would notice him before I was already at my car, already inside it, already in the worst possible position. I think about the version of that night where I didn't look up, where I was tired enough, distracted enough, phone absorbed enough that I just walked straight to spot 214, clicked my key fob, and got in. 41 steps. I know exactly how long it takes. In the version of that night where I don't look up, I am inside my car, alone, on the lowest level of an underground structure before I understand anything is wrong. I changed parking garages, I paid the extra $40 a month, and I never, not once, walked to my car at night after that without my keys already in my hand and my eyes already up. One more thing. A few months after it happened, I mentioned it to a colleague, a woman who'd worked in the same building for 6 years. She went quiet for a second and then said that something similar had happened to her in that same garage on level 3 about 8 months earlier. She'd never reported it. She'd told herself the same thing I'd told myself for the first 20 minutes of that night. Probably nothing, probably overthinking it. Don't make a scene. She'd gotten to her car and driven home and filed it in the part of her memory reserved for things that were probably fine. I asked her why she hadn't said anything. She said she didn't think anyone would take it seriously enough to do anything. I didn't know what to say to that. I still don't. But I think about that conversation every time someone tells me that nothing actually happened.